Well, I did say I would make a few movies concerning our friend Paris Marx, and the third movie I'm going to make on him is how he claims, how he thinks the threat of ISIS isn't real. It's just created by the corporate media. This is so stupid that I find it difficult to argue with this one, but I'm going to try anyway. So let's see where this will lead us.
Comrades, if you've watched the corporate media over the last few months, you've undoubtedly seen reports that ISIS has their eyes and weapons fixed on the West. What if I told you that's a lie?
You know, it's a good thing that you warned us that you would be using propaganda to try and get your story across. It's not the Western media that thinks ISIS is bad for society at large. Your movie was made in 2015. I think April. I'll have to check it in a moment. I probably won't be asked though. ISIS was already well established by then. They were usually going by the name ISIL, and then it became ISIS, and now it's usually IS, no matter where you are. But before you made your movie, there was already an attack in Turkey that killed 51 people and injured 140. It was seen as the biggest act of terrorism on Turkish soil to that date. And this was in 11 May 2013. That's well before you made your movie. And are we going to consider Turkey part of the Western world or not? You know what? I don't even care if we do. The thing is, Turkey had nothing to do with ISIL when that happened. They weren't really that big a deal in it. I mean, there were people talking about how Turkey should help the Kurds, and Turkey didn't. And yet still, ISIS car bombed Turkish citizens. And this is because of the corporate media, you think? Are you really that dense? This is so unfair of you. You are just lying and ignoring the fact that people get killed because of this. And this is not even the first heinous actions of ISIL or ISIS or IS, but it was the first big action on NATO soil. And we're all part of NATO, so basically they started a war against NATO. And the basic rule is if you attack one member of NATO, you attack all members of NATO. So don't try to put this into the shoes of the West. It's not the West that started this conflict, nor was it the West that started entering this conflict. I mean, there is arguably reason to say that there would not be ISIL if not for the Americans going into Iraq, but it's the leaving of Iraq that started ISIL, not the being there. And the attack on Turkey is an attack on the NATO, and Turkey is a NATO member. So ISIL did start a war with the West.
The focus of ISIS is not and has never been the West. Sure, they now parrot lines to instill fear in us, but that's only because the Western media and our governments chose them first. They elevated ISIS to be the next group for us to fear, and ISIS has accepted the role because it helps their cause.
Yeah, that's blatantly not true. As I said, the car bomb thing in May 2013, which ISIS did claim that was their action, is basically an attack on the Western world and on NATO. So it's not them being hoarded into a war, it's them trying to get us to engage in a war with them because they like to polarize society even further. And you're denying this. You're denying the fact that 51 people died in Turkey because of a car bomb attack by ISIS because it doesn't suit your narrative. Those people did die, however, and they did get killed by a car bomb. So that was corporate media. And it's bad enough that you deny this. You also then, I assume, are going to deny all the other mass murders being done in name of ISIS. For example, I think it was 2014 as well, when they were starting to kill the Yazidis. And if I look it up, that's about 30 to 50,000 Yazidis fled into the mountains, and we don't know how many of them survived. This is August 2014. Did this not happen? Did the media make this up? Seriously though, I mean, denying the death of 50 people, but this is 30 to 50,000.
If they're positioned as a great enemy of the West, it not only helps legitimize their mission, but to attract more supporters, which they need to grow.
Yes, and that's why they are polarizing, and that's why they're trying to goad us into a war with them. This is why they keep attacking not only Western location, but Middle Eastern locations as well, because they try to polarize society. I mean, you need to go back into the history of Muslim faith to recognize the fact that Sunni and Shiite usually were at war at any given time anyway, and Wahhabism and Salafism make that worse. And guess where ISIS is coming from? But yeah, you're missing part of the story. This is not the media making this happen. This is something that's as old as the Muslim religion itself.
The truth, however, is they're not a great threat. They don't have a big military force, nor a huge store of arms. The weapons they have come from the cities they've looted, and that doesn't amount to much in the big picture.
Yeah, I'm once again inclined to partially agree with you. I mean, they're not that big a threat, but at the moment they're the biggest threat in the world. They don't have a huge army, yet they have an impressive kill count, and they don't have that scary weapons, and most of them are from places they've looted. But a stolen AK-47 is still a deadly AK-47, so you're partly right, but you're also very wrong. I mean, I don't want to be rude, but if the Paris attack was done with completely stolen weapons, the people still died. Now, would it have mattered if those weapons were bought or if those weapons were given by Patreon? It doesn't matter. The end result is people die, and that's all there is to it. And this is not something concocted by corporate media. This is reality. You should, you know, look around.
There's also reason to believe they're not making as much money as they used to. The price of oil has plummeted, and part of the reason they're destroying historical sites is to sell artifacts on the black market.
Yeah, that could be true. It could be part of the reason why they are destroying historical sites. It could also be because they feel they have to based on their ideology. And you're also right that the price of oil has plummeted. It's kind of funny because one of the partners that ISIS has is Saudi Arabia, which is one of the biggest players when it comes to the world market in oil. So maybe Saudi Arabia is trying to prevent them from getting too big. I don't know. This is me filling in blanks. And I'm probably not doing that great. I'm not an international observer. Thing is, though, there are plenty of ways ISIS is making money. And that's not the main goal of ISIS. The main goal of ISIS is to spread fear and to enforce an Islamic state. Oh, pronunciation is dreadful there, but okay, never mind. And this is what they're doing. This is also why, for example, the flag they are using is as close to a replica as they can get to the flag that was once used by Muhammad. Is this a coincidence? Well, maybe. But I know this. It's not the corporate media.
John Kerry has said these guys are not 10 feet tall. They're not as disciplined as everybody thinks. They're not as organized as everybody thinks. The former head of Britain's MI6, Richard Dearlove, has said the conflict in the Middle East is essentially one of Muslim and Muslim. And of ISIS, he said it is surely better to ignore them. And he's absolutely right. How many people has ISIS killed in the West? Zero. Some people saying to have been inspired by ISIS have committed attacks in some Western cities. But ISIS itself has not reached the West, and they really have no interest in doing so.
Well, I'm going to say they're partly right. I mean, they aren't 10 feet tall and they aren't immortal and they're not made out of adamantium and blah, 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 but they still kill people. And if you're going to say, well, it's only Muslim against Muslim, so why the hell are we there? You know, that in itself is the reason to be there, to help those that cannot help themselves. Now, do those Muslims need to stop being a Muslim and start joining the Western world? No. I mean, be a Muslim, whatever. I don't care about religion. But ISIS is killing those that are of a slightly different ideology than theirs. Everyone who is not part of your specific form of belief, according to the Quran, is a kafir. So they are killing kafirs. And basically, Sharia says if you abdicate Muslim faith, you are punishable by death. And they are the executioners of that because they feel that a lot of people who call themselves Muslim are Muslim in the wrong way, therefore they need to be killed. This is what they are doing. I agree with you when you say most of the death caused by ISIS is Muslim. This is true. But you're wrong when you say they haven't pointed their arrows westward. As I said at the beginning of the movie, I started with a car bomb in Turkey. And Turkey is, whether they are part of Europe or not, part of the Western world. They are a NATO member. I think they're the second largest army in NATO. So we cannot pretend that those people, well, they don't count. Bullshit, they do count. They're part of us. And did ISIS go into the Western world? Yes, they did. Even before the movement of refugees from Syria to Europe, they said, we will start an exodus of refugees. And amongst the sheep, we will be. And this is what we saw happen in Paris. This is what we saw happen in Brussels. And to a lesser extent, in Cologne. Cologne wasn't really ISIS, I'm pretty sure of it, but it was idiots that came along with the true refugees. And you're pretending that this isn't happening. You're saying, well, it's only the corporate media that makes it look bad. Bullshit. How many people died in Paris again? And how many people died in the two attacks Brussels has seen? Are you denying this? Well, maybe you didn't think of it because by the time you made your movie, Brussels hadn't happened yet. But I think Paris already did. I could be wrong. Maybe Paris didn't. But I'm bloody well sure that the thing in Turkey already happened. And Turkey is part of us. Bloody hell, you're an idiot.
Their focus is on their own backyard, on the Middle East and part of North Africa. The UN has said ISIS has killed thousands of Muslims, injured thousands more, and are indiscriminate in their killing.
And you don't think that that in itself is a reason why we should help the victims of this area? That in itself should not be a reason why we should help stabilize the Middle East. The Middle East that got destabilized because of interventions done by the West. I mean, I still recognize that there's some fault of the West in there. And I recognize ISIS is a result of those faults. And you're saying, well, we don't have to worry about them. Let it happen. It'll work itself out. No. People are dying. And we are to stand back because they're not us? This is your argument? Even though ISIS already did attack us? This is madness. You are a very vile person, aren't you? They don't count. Who cares about them? And well, they didn't attack the West. Well, they did by now, but maybe not when you said your thing. Actually, they did by then as well, but hey, that's not the West you care about. You are a very vile little man. It's difficult for me not to spout more hate on you right now. I mean, I cannot believe that you consider yourself to be righteous. And no, you are not the corporate media. You're a shill though, but you're not the corporate media. And you blame the corporate media for the stuff that ISIS has done. Or not so much the stuff that they have done, but to blow it up as if it's something big. Millions of people have died or have been displaced because of ISIS. Well, not only ISIS, yeah, you're right, not only ISIS. But they are a big part of the problem. And you're trying to make it sound like this is something cooked up by the news report, by Fox, by Comedy Central perhaps? Fucking hell, mate. Fucking hell.
ISIS is considered to be made up of Sunni Muslims, and even that can be debated, but they've killed Sunni and Shia Muslims, as well as people from other religious groups.
Well, yeah, you could say they're Sunni Muslims, and they probably consider themselves that too. They call themselves extremely Sunni Muslims. They call themselves Salafi or Salafists. And they kill other Muslims because they deem other Muslims kafir, because they don't uphold the laws of Sharia the way they see it. This is something Muhammad apparently said was okay, or at least this is something people are taking out of the Quran and out of the Hadith. Don't you get it? By saying they are just Sunni, you're already misinterpreting what they're doing. This is a cleansing of the world, and they cleanse it to be more like them. There is only one good way of being according to them, and this is what they're trying to achieve. I'm not going to say whether I agree or disagree with them. What I find mostly interesting now is that you don't seem to recognize that. You seem to think that, well, no, this is just Sunni Muslim. Muslims can get along fine. Don't worry about that. But they can't. As far as history has been concerned, Muslims didn't get along. The only time when Muslims get along with other people is when they're not in a majority position, when they're not in a power position. Then they can get along with people because then they can keep their rules to themselves and not try to enforce it on others. What you see happen now in Syria and in Iraq, we've already seen for years and years and years in Saudi Arabia. But somehow we're not talking about that. We are talking, however, on ISIS. And don't get me wrong, I think we need to stop ISIS as well. Not because they're a Muslim oriented group, but because they kill people to get their way. But yeah, no, this is just the corporate media again. I know.
Is ISIS a group to be feared? In a way, yes, of course. And there's an argument to be made for why we should be fighting them. But that argument shouldn't be based on them being a threat to the West, because they are not.
Then read up on what Salafism is all about, because they are a threat to everyone who is not them. You seem to totally misunderstand that. This is why there have been more Muslims killed by them than non-Muslims, because they are closer by. But trust me, if they had a chance, they would kill everyone not thinking like them. This is their goal. This is what they set out to do. And you don't seem to realize this. I don't know why, though.
Civilians in Iraq, Syria, and surrounding countries are the ones really at risk from ISIS. And if we're to send Western militaries to combat them, we need to recognize and understand this, instead of accepting the lies of our governments and media who want to make us feel unsafe in our homes. The idea that ISIS is a threat to the West was created by our governments and media to scare us, because they know that makes us more open to divisive narratives and having our freedoms revoked.
We already do recognize and understand that other Muslims are also at risk of ISIS, probably more so than the Western world. Now, the Western world, they've only been able to touch with terrorist attacks, which is dreadful, but I agree we shouldn't overexert the influence it has. I mean, it's mostly terror, but more people die from smoking every year than from terrorism. And we still seem to be smoking, so might be a wrong comparison here, but still. And yes, Muslims are the main target of Salafism. I mean, if you're not their sort of Muslim, they will kill you. Hell, there have been stories leaked already how they are cleansing their own warrior castes because they don't fit the narrative they want to have. But you are trying to make a narrative making it sound like, well, they're bad, but they're not the worst. And I can't think of why you would say that Western media is worse than ISIS. But yeah, you're a shill, mate. You are.
I'll talk more about that in the next video. Comrades, is there anything the media and governments have said about ISIS that made you realize they were lying? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.
Well, I'm not doing all your movies in sequence, so I'll probably not do the next one you had on ISIS. I might. I'm not sure. I probably won't. The worst part is, though, yes, there are some things that the corporate media, if you want to call it like that, is lying about. There is something that we are not being told. But the lies that I uncover on the Western market of media, so to speak, are nowhere near as heinous as the lies as you are committing here. It's too stupid for words. Well, ISIS is not a problem for us. I'm sorry, mate, but even when you made this movie, that wasn't true. I mean, I could say, well, okay, there was the Paris attack and the Brussels bombing and the Brussels attack. You could say, well, that was after I made my movie. I'm not quite sure if it was, but even if it was, the Turkey attack that I started with, the bombing that killed 51 people and left over 100 people injured, that was well before you made your movie, mate, because that was 2013. And I don't know how racist you are, but I do consider the Turks to be part of the West, to be part of us. But you ignore that. It's not your narrative. They're not your victims. They're not your mates. They're just corporate sellouts, the corporate media, the military industrial complex, whatever you want to call them. And don't get me wrong, it's not as if I want to defend them, but your lies are so blatant that all I can say is, well, but it's not. ISIS is doing this. It's not the media hyping it up. They're actually doing this. But you don't want to hear that because to you, it's the media. I'm sorry, Paris Marx, but you're an idiot. You really are. If you actually believe this shit. Anyway, so far I'm going to go on this movie and then I'm going to stop. So this is the moment where I'm going to stop. Please like, share, and subscribe. But far more important, leave a comment down below. I mean, even if you don't like it, even if you don't subscribe, I am more than interested in your opinion. And I'm pretty sure Paris Marx won't lower himself to answer any of the rebuttals I gave him. Um, but then again, maybe he will. He's more than welcome to. I'd love to answer it. And I would love to answer any of you all if you leave a comment. If you don't, then obviously I cannot answer anything. Um, I'm just rambling on now, so I guess I'll just call it a good night. Good night, all.